Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated. To the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated, our gain in net worth during 2000 was $3.96 billion, which increased the per share book value of both our Class A and Class B stock by 6.5% over the last 36 years. That is since present management took over. Per share book value has grown from $19 to $40,442, a gain of 23.6% compounded annually. All figures used in this report apply to Berkshire A shares as etc. to the only stock that the company held outstanding before 1996. The B shares have an economic interest equal to 1/30th that of the A. Overall, we had a decent year, our book value gain having outpaced the performance of the S&P 500. And though this judgment is necessarily subjective, we believe Berkshire gain in per share intrinsic value moderately exceeded its gain in book value. Intrinsic value, as well as other investment and accounting terms and concepts, are explained in our owner's manual on pages 59 to 66. Intrinsic value is discussed on page 64. Furthermore, we completed 2 significant acquisitions that we negotiated in 1999 and initiated 6 more. All told, these purchases have cost us about $8 billion with 97% of the amount paid in cash and 3% in stock. The 8 businesses we've acquired have aggregate sales of about $13 billion and employ 58,000 people. Still, we incurred no debt in making these purchases, and our shares outstanding have increased only 1/3 of 1%. Better yet, we remain awash in liquid assets and are both eager and ready for even larger acquisitions. I will detail our purchases in the next section of the report, but I will tell you now that we have cutting-edge industries as brick, carpet, insulation, and paint. Try to control your excitement. On the minus side, policyholder growth at Geico slowed at a halt. As the year progressed, it has become much more expensive to obtain new business. I told you last year that we would get our money's worth from stepped-up advertising in Geico in 2000, but I was wrong. We'll examine reasons later in the support. Another negative which has persisted for several years is that we see our equity portfolio as only mildly attractive. We own stocks of some excellent businesses, but most of our holdings are fully priced and are unlikely to deliver more than moderate returns in the future. We're not alone in facing this problem. The long-term prospect for equities in general is far from exciting. Finally, there is a negative that recurs annually. Charlie Munger, Berkshire's vice chairman, my partner, and are a year older than when we last reported to you. Mitigating this adverse development is the indisputable fact that the age of your top managers is increasing at a considerably lower rate percentage-wise. And that is the case at almost all other major corporations. Better yet, this differential will widen in the future. Charlie and I continue to aim at increasing Berkshire's per share value at a rate that over time will modestly exceed the gain from owning the S&P 500. As the table on the facing page shows, a small annual advantage in our favor can, if sustained, produce an anything but small long-term advantage. To reach our goal, we will need to add a few good businesses to Berkshire stable each year, have the business we own generally gain in value, and avoid any material increase in our outstanding shares. We are confident about meeting the last 2 objectives. The first will require some luck. It's appropriate here to thank 2 groups that made my job both easy and fun last year, just as they do every year. First, our operating managers continue to run their business in splendid fashion, which allows me to spend my time allocating capital rather than supervising them. I wouldn't be good at that anyway. Our managers are a very special breed. At most large companies, the truly talented divisional managers seldom have the job they really want. Instead, they learn to become CEOs either that their present employer elsewhere. Indeed, if they say put, their colleagues are likely to feel they have failed. At Berkshire, our all-stars have exactly the jobs they want, once they hope and expect to keep throughout their business lifetimes. They therefore concentrate solely on maximizing the long-term value of the businesses that they own. And love if the business succeed, they have succeeded, and they stick with us in our last 36 years. Berkshire has never had a manager of a significant subsidiary voluntarily leave to join another business. The other group to which I owe enormous thanks is the home office staff. After 8 acquisitions, more than doubled our worldwide workforce to about 112,000. Charlie and I went off last year and added 1 more person in headquarters. Charlie, bless him, never lets me forget Ben Franklin's advice. A small leak can sink a great ship. Now we have 13.8 people. The tiny band works miracles in 2000. It handled all the details connected with R8. Acquisitions precede extensive regulatory and tax filings. Our tax return covers 4,896 pages, smoothly produced, an annual meeting to which 25,000 tickets were issued, and accurately dispensed checks to 3,660 charities designated by our shareholders. In addition, the group dealt with all the routine tasks served up by a company with a revenue run rate of $40 billion and more than 330,000 owners. And to add all of this, the other 12.8 are delight to be around. I should pay to have my job. Acquisitions of 2000. Our acquisition techniques at Berkshire is all simplicity himself. We answered the phone. I'm also glad to report that it rings a bit more often now because owners and our managers increasingly wish to join their companies with Berkshire. Our acquisition criteria are set forth on page 23 and the number to call is 402-346-1400. Let me tell you a bit about the business we have purchased during the past 14 months, starting with 2 transactions that were initiated in 1999 but closed in 2000. This list includes some smaller purchases that were made by the managers of our subsidiaries and that in most cases will be integrated into their operations. reasons. I described the first purchase, 76% of Mid-American Energy, and last year's report because of regulatory constraints on our voting privileges. We perform only a one-line consolidation of Mid-American's earnings and equity in our financial statements. If we instead fully consolidated the company's figures, our revenue in 2000 would have been $5 billion greater than we reported, though net income remained the same. On November 23, 1999, I received a one-page fax from Bruce Court that appended a Washington Post article describing an aborted buyout of Court Business Services. Despite his name, Bruce has no connection with Court. Rather, he is an airplane broker who had sold Berkshire a jet in 1986, who knew before the fax had not been in touch with me for about 10 years. I knew nothing about CORT, but I immediately printed out its SEC filings and liked what I saw. That same day, I told Bruce I had possible interest and asked him to arrange a meeting with Paul Arnold, Court CEO. Paul and I got together on November 29, and I knew that once we had the right ingredients for purchase, at once we had the fine thought glamorous business outstanding manager and the price going by that on the failed deal that made sense. Operating out of 117 showrooms, Court national leader in rent-to-rent furniture primarily used in offices but also in temporary occupants of apartments. This business, it should be noted, has no similarity to rent-to-own. Being noted that has no similarity to rent-to-own operations, which usually involve the sale of home furnishing and electronics to people having limited income and poor credit. We quickly purchased Court for Wesco, our 80% owned subsidiary, paying about $386 million in cash. You will find more details about Court operations in Wesco's 1999-2000 annual reports. Both Charlie and I enjoy working with Paul, and Court looks a good bet to beat our original expectations. Early last year, Ron Ferguson of General Ray put me in contact with Bob Berry, whose family owned U.S. liability for 49 years. This ensuring, along with a highly respected writer of unusual risks, excess and surplus lines, and his insurance jargon. After Bob and I got in touch, we agreed by phone on a half-stock, half-cash deal. In recent years, Tom Nernay has managed the operation for the Berry family and has achieved a rare combination of excellent growth and unusual profitability. Tom is a powerhouse in other ways and unusual profitability. Tom is a powerhouse in other ways as well. In addition to having 4 adopted children, 2 from Russia, he has an extended family. The Philadelphia Bills, a young teen girls basketball team that Tom coaches. The team had a 62-4 record last year and finished second in the AAU national tournament. Few property casualty companies are outstanding businesses. We have far more than our share and use liability as luster to the collection. Ben Bridge Jeweler was another purchase we made by phone prior to any face-to-face meeting between me and the management. Ed Bridge, who with his cousin John manages this 65-store West Coast retailer, is a friend of Barnett Hellsberg, from whom we bought Hellsberg Diamonds in 1995. Upon learning that the Bridge family proposed to sell its company, Barnett gave Berkshire a strong recommendation. Ed then called and explained his business to me, also sending some figures, and we made a deal again, half for cash and half for stock. Ed and John are fourth-generation owner-managers of a business started 82 years ago in Seattle. Both the business and the family, including Urban, Bob, the fathers of Jen, and Ed, enjoy extraordinary reputation. Same-store sales have increased 9%, 11%, 13%, 10%, 12%, 20%, and 7% over the past 7 years, a truly remarkable record. It was vital to the family that the company operated in the future as in the past. No one wanted another jewelry chain to come in and decimate the organization with ideas about synergy and cost saving, which though they would never work, were certain to be tried. I told Ed and John that they would be in charge, and they knew that I could be believed. After all, it's obvious that their chairman would be a disaster at actually running a store selling jewelry, though there are members of his family who have earned black belts as purchasers. In their typically classy way, the Bridges allocated a substantial portion of the proceeds from the sale to the hundreds of co-workers who had helped the company achieve its success. We're proud to be associated with both the family and the company. In July, we acquired Justin Industries, the leading maker of Western boots, including Justin, Tony Lama, Nakona, and Chippewa brands, and the premier producer of brick in Texas and 5 neighboring states. Here again, our acquisition involved serendipity. On May 4th, I received a fax from Mark Jones, a stranger to me, proposing that Berkshire join a group to acquire an unnamed company. I faxed him back, explaining that with rare exceptions, we don't invest with others, but would happily pay him a commission if he sent details, and we later made a purchase. He replied that the mystery company was Justin. I then went to Fort Worth to meet John Roach, chairman of the company, and John Justin, who had built the business and was a major shareholder. Soon after, we bought Justin for $570 million in cash. John Justin loved Justin Industries, but had been forced to retire because of severe health problems, which sadly led to his death in late February. John was a class act as a citizen, businessman, and a human being. Fortunately, he had room to outstanding managers, Harold Melton and Acme, and Randy Watson, Justin Boot, each of whom runs his company autonomously. Acme, the larger of the two operations, produced more than 1 billion bricks per year at its 22 plants, about 11.7% of the industry's national output. The brick business, however, is necessarily regional in its territory. Acme enjoys unquestioned leadership. When Texans are asked to name a brand of bricks, 75% respond Acme compared to 16% for the runner-up. Before our purchase, I couldn't have named a brand of brick. Could you have? This brand recognition is not only due to Acme's product quality, but also reflects many decades of extraordinary community service by both the company and John Justin. I can't resist pointing out that Berkshire, whose top management has long been mired in the 19th century, is now one of the very few authentic clicks and bricks business around. We went into 2000 with Geico doing significant business on the internet, and then we added Acme. You can bet this move by Berkshire is making them sweat in Silicon Valley. In June, Bob Shaw, CEO of Shaw Industries, the world's largest carpet manufacturer, came to see me with his partner Julian Saul, and the CEO of a second company with which Shaw was a mulling merger. The potential partner, however, faced huge asbestos liabilities from past activities, and any deal dependent on these being eliminated through insurance. The executives visiting me wanted Berkshire to provide a policy that would pay all future asbestos costs. I explained that though we could write an exceptionally large policy, far larger than any other insurer would even think of offering, we would never issue a policy that lacked a cap. Bob and Julian decided if we didn't want to bet the wrench on the extent of the acquirer's liability, neither did they, so their deal died. But my interest in Shaw was sparked, and a few months later, Charlie and I met with Bob to work out a purchase by Berkshire. A key feature of the deal was that both Bob and Julian were to continue owning at least 5% of Shaw. This leaves us associated with the best in the business, as shown by Bob and Julian's record. Each built a large successful carpet business before joining forces in 1998. Shaw has annual sales of about $4 billion, and we owe 87.3% of the company, leaving aside our insurance operation. Shaw is by far our largest business. Now, if people walk all over us, we won't mind. In July, Bob Mannheim, a director of Benjamin Moore Paint, called to ask if Berkshire might be interested in acquiring it. I knew Bob from Solomon, where he was general counsel during some difficult times, and held been in very high regard, so my answer was, tell me more. In late August, Charlie and I met with Richard Rube and Yvan Dupuy, past and present CEOs of Benjamin Moore. We liked them. We liked the business, and we made $1 billion cash offer in the spot. In October, their board approved the transaction we completed in December. Benjamin Moore has been making paint for 117 years and has 1,000 of independent dealers that are vital assets to its business. Make sure you specify our product for your next paint job. Finally, in late December, we agreed to buy Johns Manville Corporation for about $1.8 billion. This company's incredible odyssey over the last few decades, too multifaceted to be chronicled here, was shaped by its long history as a manufacturer of asbestos products. The much-publicized health problems that affected many people exposed to asbestos led to JM's declaring bankruptcy in 1982. Subsequently, the bankruptcy court established a trust for victims, the major asset of which was controlling interest in JM. The trust, which sensibly wanted to diversify its assets, agreed last June to sell the business to an LBO buyer. In the end, though, the LBO group wasn't able to obtain financing. Consequently, the deal was called off on Friday, December 8th. The following Monday, Charlie and I called Bob Felice, chairman of the trust, and made an all-cash offer with no financing contingencies. The next day, the trustees voted tentatively to accept our offer, and a week later, we signed the contract. JM is a nation's leading producer of commercial and industrial insulation and also has major positions in roofing systems and a variety of engineered products. The company's sales exceed $2 billion in the business that earn good of cyclical returns. Jerry Henry's GM CEO had announced his retirement plans a year ago, but I'm happy to report that Charlie and I have convinced him to stick around. Two economic factors probably contributed to the rush of acquisition activity we experienced last year. First, many managers and owners foresaw near-term slowdowns in their business. In fact, we purchased several companies whose earnings will almost certainly decline this year from peaks they reached in 1999 or 2000. The declines make no differences given that we expect all of our business to know now that they have ups and downs. Only the sale presentation of investment makes the earnings move forever upward. We don't care about the bumps. What matters are the overall results. But the decisions of other people are sometimes affected by the near-term outlook, which can both spur sellers and temper the enthusiasm purchasers who might otherwise compete with us. A second factor that helped us in 2000 was that the market for junk bonds dried up as the year progressed. In the two preceding years, junk bond obligations have relaxed their standards, buying the obligations of even weaker issuers at appropriate prices. The effects of this laxity were felt last year in the ballooning of default. In this environment, financial buyers of the business, those who wish to buy using only a little sliver of equity, became unable to borrow all they thought they needed. What they could still borrow, moreover, it came at high price. Consequently, LBO operators became less aggressive in their bidding when business came up for sale last year because we analyzed purchases on an all-equity basis. Our evaluations did not change, which means we became considerably more competitive. Aside from the economic factors that benefited us, we now enjoy a major growing advantage in making acquisitions in that we are often the buyer of choice for the seller. That fact, of course, doesn't assure a deal. Sellers have to like our price and we have to like their business and management, but it does help. We find it meaningful when an owner cares about whom he sells to. We would like to do business with someone who loves his company, not just the money that a sale will bring him, though certainly understand why he likes that as well. When this emotional attachment exists, it signals that important qualities will likely be found within the business: honest accounting, pride of product, respect for customers, and a loyal group of associates having a strong sense of direction. The reverse is apt to be true. Also, when an owner auctions of his business exhibiting a total lack of interest in what follows, you will frequently find that it has been dressed up for sale, particularly when the seller is a financial owner. And if owners behave with little regard for the business and its people, their conduct will often contaminate attitudes and practices throughout the company. When a business masterpiece has been created by a lifetime or several lifetimes of unstinting care and exceptional talent, it should be important to care and exceptional talent. It should be important to the owner of the corporation to carry on its history. Charlie and I believe Berkshire provides an almost unique home. We take our obligations to the people who create their business very seriously. Berkshire's ownership structure ensures that we can fulfill our promises when we tell John Justin that his business will remain headquartered in Fort Worth. We're sure the Birch family that its operation will not be merged with another jeweler. These sellers can take those promises to the bank. How much better it is for the painter of a business, Rembrandt, to personally select its permanent home than to have a trust officer or an interested here's auction it off. Throughout the years, we have had great experiences with those who recognize the truth and apply it to their business creations. We'll leave the auctions to others. The economics of property casualty insurance. Our main business, though, we have others of great importance, is insurance. To understand Berkshire, therefore, it is necessary that you understand how to evaluate an insurance company. The key determinants are 1, the amount of float that the business generates, 2, its cost, and 3, the most critical of all, the long-term outlook for both of these factors. To begin with, float is money we hold but don't own. In an insurance operation, float arises because premiums are received before losses are paid, an interval that sometimes extends over many years. During that time, the insurer invests the money. This pleasant activity typically carries with it a downside. The premiums that an insurer takes in usually do not cover the losses and expenses it eventually must pay. That leaves it a running underwriting loss, which is the cost of float. An insurance business has value if its cost of float over time is less than the cost of the company would otherwise incur to obtain funds, but the business is lemon if its cost of float is higher than market rates for money. A caution is appropriate here because loss costs must be estimated. Insurers have enormous latitude in figuring their underwriting results, and that makes it very difficult to investors to calculate the company's true cost of float. Errors of estimation, usually innocent but sometimes not, can be used. The consequence of these miscalculations flow directly into earnings. An experienced observer can usually detect large-scale errors in reserving, but the general public can typically do no more than accept what's presented. At times, I've been amazed by the numbers that big-name auditors have implicitly blessed. Both the income statements and balance sheets of insurers can be minefields. At Berkshire, we strive to both consist and conservative in our reserving, but we will make mistakes, and we warn you that there is nothing symmetrical about surprises in the insurance business. They almost always are unpleasant. The table that follows at intervals the flow generated by the various segments Berkshire Insurance operations since we entered the business 34 years ago upon acquiring Indemnity Company, whose traditional lines are included in the segment. Other primary for the table, we have calculated our float, which we generate in large amounts relative to our premium volume by adding net loss reserves, loss adjustment reserves, funds held under insurance assumed, and unearned premium reserves. Then subtracting insurance-related receivables, prepaid acquisition costs, prepaid taxes, and deferred charges applicable to assumed reinsurance. Don't panic, there won't be a quiz. Year: 1967, 1977, 1987, 1997, 1998, 1999. Geico: 2,917, 1997, 1998, 3,125, 3,044, 3,943. General Ray: from 1998, 14,909, 15,166, 15,525. Other insurance: 4,701, 4,014, 4,305, 6,285, 700, 805. Other primary: 20, 131, 807, 455, 415, 403, 598. Total: 20, 171, 1,508, 7,386, 22,754, 25,298, 27,871. We're pleased by the growth in our float during 2000. We're not happy with its costs. Over the years, our cost of float has been very close to zero, with underwriting profits realized in most years, offsetting the occasional terrible year such as 1984, where our cost was staggering at 19%. In 2000, however, we had an underwriting loss of $1.6 billion, which gave us a float cost of 6%. Absent a mega catastrophe, we expect our float cost to fall in 2001, perhaps substantially, in large part because of the corrections in pricing at the general rate that should increasingly be followed as the year progresses. On a smaller scale, Geico may experience the same improving trend. There are two factors affecting our cost of float that are very rare at other insurers but that now loom large at Berkshire. First, a few insurers that are currently experiencing large losses have offloaded a significant portion of these on us in a manner that penalizes our current earnings but gives us float we can use for many years to come. After the loss that we incur in the first year of the policy, there are no further costs attached to this business. When these policies are properly priced, we welcome to pain today, gain tomorrow effects they have. In 1999, $400 million of our underwriting loss, about 27.8% of total, came from business of this kind. In 2000, the figure was $482 million. 34.4% of our loss, we have the wish of predicting how much similar business we will write in the future, but we do get will typically be in large chunks. Because these transactions can materially distort our figures, we will tell you about them as they occur. Other reinsurers have little taste for this insurance. They simply can't stomach what huge underwriting losses do to reported results, even though these losses are produced by policies. Overall economics are certain to be favorable. You should be careful, therefore, in comparing underwriting results with those of other insurers. An even more significant item in our numbers, which again you won't find much of elsewhere, arises from transactions in which we assume past losses of a company that wants to put its troubles behind it. To illustrate, the XYZ insurance company might have last year bought a policy obligation to us to pay the first $1 billion of losses that loss adjustment expenses from events that happened in, say, 1995 and earlier years. These contracts can be very large, though we always record a cap on our exposure. We entered into a number of such transactions in 2000 and expect to close several more in 2001. Under GAAP accounting, this retroactive insurance neither benefits nor penalizes our current earnings. Instead, we set up an asset called deferred charges applicable to assumed reinsurance in amount reflecting the difference between the premium we receive and the higher losses we expect to pay, for which reserves are immediately established. We then amortize this asset by making annual charges to earnings that create earning equivalent underwriting losses. You will find the amount of losses that we incur from these transactions in both our quarterly and annual management discussion. By their nature, these losses will continue for many years, often stretching into decades. As an offset, though, we have the use of float, lots of it. Clearly, float carrying an annual cost of this kind is not as terrible as float we generate from policies that are expected to produce an underwriting profit of which we have plenty. Nevertheless, this retroactive insurance should be decent business for us. The end of all of this is that I expect our cost of float to be very attractive in the future, but be rarely to return at no cost mode because of the annual charge that retroactive insurance will lay on us. Also, obviously, the ultimate benefits that we derive from float will depend not only on its cost but fully as important how effectively we deploy it. Our retroactive business is almost single-handedly the work of Ajit Jain, whose praises I sing annually. It is impossible to overstate how valuable Ajit is to Berkshire. Don't worry about my health, worry about this year. Last year, Ajit brought home a $2.4 billion reinsurance premium, perhaps the largest in history from a policy that retroactively covers major UK company. Subsequently, he wrote a large policy protecting the Texas Rangers from the possibility that Alex Rodriguez will become permanently disabled. As sports fans know, A-Rod was signed for a $252 million record, and we think that our policy probably also set a record for disability insurance. We cover many of other sports figures as well. Another example of his versatility, Ajit last fall negotiated a very interesting deal with Grab.com, an internet company whose goal was to attract millions of people to its site and there to extract information from them that would be useful to marketers. So these people, Grab.com, held out the possibility of a $1 billion prize having a $170 million present value, and we assured its payment. A message on the site explained that the chance of any one enterprise was low, and indeed no one went, but the possibility of a win was far from nil. Writing such policy, you receive a modest premium, face the possibility of huge loss, and get good odds. Very few insurers like that equation, and they're unable to cure their unhappiness by reinsurance. Because each policy has unusual and sometimes unique characteristics, insurers can lay off the occasional shock loss through their standard reinsurance arrangements. Therefore, any insurance CEO doing a piece of business like this must run the small but real risk of a horrible quarterly earnings number, one that he would not enjoy explaining to his board or shareholders. Charlie and I, however, like any proposition that we see compelling mathematical sense, regardless of its effect on reported earnings. At General Ray, the news has turned considerably better. Ron Ferguson, along with Joe Brandon, Ted Montross, and talented supporting cast took many actions during 2000 to bring that company's profitability back to past standards. Though our pricing is not fully corrected, we have significantly repriced business what was severely unprofitable or dropped it altogether. If there's no mega catastrophe in 2001, General Ray's float cost should fall materially. The last couple of years haven't been any fun for Ron and his crew, but they have stepped up to tough decisions, and Charlie and I applaud them for these. General Ray has several important and enduring business advantages. Better yet, it has managers who will make the most most of them. In aggregate, our smaller insurance operations produce an excellent underwriting profit in 2000 while generating significant float, just as they have done for more than a decade. If these companies were a single and separate operation, people would consider an outstanding insurer. Because the companies instead reside in any enterprise as large as Berkshire, the world may not appreciate their accomplishments, but I sure do. Last year, I thanked Rod Eldred, John Kaiser, Don Tell, and Don Worcester, and I again do so. In addition, we now thanks to Tom Ernie at U.S. Liability and Michael Stearns, the new head of Cyprus. You may notice that Brett Kinsler, who was CEO of Cyprus and whose prices I've sung in the past, is no longer in the list above. That's because we needed a new manager at Feckheimer Brothers, our Cincinnati-based uniform company, and called on Brad. We seldom moved Berkshire managers from our enterprise to another, but maybe we should try it more often. Brad is hitting home runs in his new job, just as us always did in Cyprus. Geico, 1-800-847-7536 or geico.com. We show below the usual table detailing the Geico's growth. Last year, I enthusiastically told you that we would step up our expenditures on advertising in 2000 and that added dollars were the best investment that Geico could make. I was wrong. The extra money we spent did not produce a commensurate increase in inquiries. Additionally, a percentage of inquiries that we converted into sales fell for the first time in many years. These negative developments combined to produce a sharp increase in our per policy acquisition cost. Years 1993, 1994, 1995, 1996, 1997, 1998, 1999, 2000. New auto policies: 346,882, 384,217, 443,539, 592,300, 868,430, 1,249,875, 1,648,095, 1,472,853. Auto policies in force: 2,011,055, 2,147,549, 2,110,037, 2,543,699, 2,949,439, 3,562,644, 4,328,900, 4,696,842. Voluntary only excludes assigned risk and the like. Agonizing over errors is a mistake, but acknowledging and analyzing them can be useful. Though that practice is rare in corporate boardrooms, Sir Charlie and I have almost never witnessed a candid post-mortem of a failed decision, particularly one involving an acquisition. A notable exception to this never-look-back approach is that of the Washington Post Company, which unfailingly objectively reviews its acquisitions 3 years after they are made. Elsewhere, triumphs are trumpeted, but dumb decisions either get no follow-up or are rationalized. The financial consequences of these boners are regularly dumped into massive restructuring charges or write-offs that are casually waved off as non-recurring. Managements just love these. Indeed, in recent years, it has seemed that no earnings statement is complete without them. The origin of these charges, though, are never explored when it comes to corporate blunders. CEO invokes the concept of the virgin birth. To get back to our examination of Geico, there are at least 4 factors that could account for the increased cost we experienced obtaining new business last year, and all probably contributed in some manner. First, in our advertising, we have pushed frequency very hard and we probably overstepped in certain media. We've always known that increasing the number of messages through any medium would eventually produce diminishing returns. The third, added an hour on a given cable channel is simply not going to be as effective as the first. Second, we may have already picked much of the low-hanging fruit. Clearly, the willingness to do business with direct market or insurance varies widely among individuals. Indeed, some percentage of Americans, particularly older ones, are reluctant to make direct purchase of any kind over the years. However, this reluctance will ebb. A new generation with its new habits will find the savings from direct purchases of their auto insurance too compelling to ignore. Another factor that surely decreased the conversion of inquiries into sales was stricter underwriting by Geico. Both the frequency and severity of losses increased during the year, and rates in certain areas became inadequate, in some cases substantially so. In these instances, we necessarily tightened our underwriting standards. This tightening, as well as the many rate increases we put during the year, made our offering less attractive to some prospects. A high percentage of callers, it should be emphasized, can still have saved money by insuring with us, understandably. However, some prospects will switch to save $200 per year but will not switch to save $50. Therefore, rate increases that bring our prices closer to those of competitors will hurt our acceptance rate, even when we continue over the best deal. Finally, the competitive picture changed in at least one important respect. State Farm, by far the largest personal auto insurers with about 98% of the market, has been very slow to raise prices. Its costs, however, are clearly increasing right along with those of the rest of the industry. Consequently, State Farm had an underwriting loss that year from auto insurance, including rebates to policyholders, of 18% of premiums compared to 4% at Geico. Our loss produced a float cost for us of 6.1% and a satisfactory result. Indeed, at Geico, we expect float over time to be free. But we estimate that State Farm float cost in 2000 was about 23%. The willingness of the largest player in the industry to tolerate such a cost makes the economics difficult for other participants. That does not take away from the fact that State Farm is one of America's greatest business stories. I've urged the company we studied at business schools because it has achieved fabulous success while following a path that in many ways defies the dogma of those institutions. Studying counter evidence is a highly useful activity, though not one always greeted with enthusiasm at citadels of learning. State Farm was launched in 1922 by a 45-year-old semi-retired Illinois farmer to compete with long-established insurers, haughty institutions in New York, Philadelphia, and Hartford that possessed overwhelming advantages in capital, reputation, and distribution. Because State Farm is a mutual company, its board members and managers could not be owners, and it had no access to capital markets during its years of fast growth. Similarly, the business never had the stock option or lavish salaries that many people think vital for American enterprises to attract able managers and thrive. In the end, however, State Farm eclipsed all its competitors. In fact, by 1999, the company had amassed a tangible net worth exceeding that of all but 4 American businesses. If you want to read how this happened, get a copy of The Farmer from Myrna. Despite the State Farm strength, however, Geico has much a better business model, one that embodies significantly lower operating costs. And when a company is selling a product with commodity-like economic characteristics, being the low-cost producer is all important. This enduring competitive advantages Geico. When it possessed in 1951, when, as a 20-year-old student, I first became enamored with its stock, is a reason that over time I will inevitably increase its market share significantly while simultaneously achieving excellent profits. Our growth will be slow, however. State Farm elects to continue bearing the underwriting losses that it is now suffering. Tony Nicely, Geico CEO, remains an owner, dreams. Everything he does makes sense. He never engages in wishful thinking or otherwise distorts reality, as so many managers do when the unexpected happens. As 2000 unfolded, Tony cut back on advertising that was not cost-effective, and he will continue to do that in 2001 if cutbacks are called for. Though we will always maintain a massive media presence, Tony has always aggressively filed for price increases where we need them. He looks at the loss reports every day and is never behind the curve. To steal a line from a competitor, we are in good hands with Tony. I've told you about our profit-sharing arrangements at Geico that targets only 2 variables, growth in policies and the underwriting results of a seasoned business. Despite the headwinds of 2000, we still had a performance that produced an 8.8% profit-sharing payment amounting to $40.7 million. Geico will be a huge part of Berkshire's future because of its rock-bottom operating costs. It offers a great many Americans the cheapest way to purchase a high-ticket product that they must buy. The company then couples this bargain with service that consistently ranks high in independent surveys. That's a combination of inevitably producing growth and profitability. In just the last few years, far more drivers have learned to associate the Geico brand with saving money in their insurance. We'll pound that team relentlessly until all Americans are aware of the value that we offer. Investments. Below we present our common stock investment. Those that had a market value of more than $1 billion at the end of 2000 are itemized. Shares. $151,610,700, $200 million, and $6,000,000, $1,727,765, $55,071,380. Company, American Express Company, the Coca-Cola Company, Gillette Company, Washington Post Company, Wells Fargo and Company, others, total common stock. 12/31/2000. Cost, dollars a million, 1,470,000, 1,299, 600, 11, 319, 6,703, 10,402. Market, 8,329, 12,188, 3,468, 1,066, 3,067, 9,501, 37,619. In 2000, we sold nearly all of our Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae shares, established 15% positions in several mid-sized companies, bought the high-yield bonds of a few issuers, very few, the categories not labeled junk without reason, and added to our holdings of high-grade mortgage-backed securities. There are no bargains among our current holdings. We're content with what we own, but far from excited by it. Many people assume that the marketable securities are Berkshire's first choice when allocating capital, but that's not true. Ever since we first published our economic principles in 1983, we have consistently stated that we would rather purchase businesses than stocks. See number 4 on page 60. One reason for that performance is personal in that I love working with our managers. They're high-grade, talented, and loyal, and frankly, I find their business behavior to be more rational and owner-oriented than the prevailing at many public companies. But there's also a powerful financial reason behind the preference, and that has to do with taxes. The taxes code make Berkshire owning 80% or more of a business far more profitable for us proportionately than our owning smaller share. When a company we own all of earns $1 million after tax, the entire amount ensures to our benefit. If The $1 million is substreamed to Berkshire. We owe no tax on the dividend, and if the earnings are retained and we were to sell the subsidiary, not likely at Berkshire, for $1 million more than we paid for, we would owe no capital gains tax. That's because our tax cost upon sale would include both what we paid for the business and all earnings is subsequently retained. Contrast that situation to what happens when we own an investment in marketable security. There, if we own a 10% stake in a business earning $10 million after tax, our $1 million share of the earnings is subject to additional state and federal taxes of about $140,000. If it is distributed to us, our tax rate on most dividends is 14%, or 2, no less than $350,000. If the $1 million is retained and subsequently captured by us in the form of a capital gain, on which our tax rate is usually about 35%, though it sometimes approaches 40%. We may defer paying the $350,000 by not immediately realizing our gain, but eventually we must pay the tax. In effect, the government is our partner. Twice when we own parts of the business, though a stock investment, but only once when we own at least 80%. Leaving aside tax factors, the formula we use for evaluating stocks and businesses is identical. Indeed, the formula for valuing all assets that are purchased for financial gain has been unchanged since it was first laid out by a very smart man in about 600 BC, though he wasn't smart enough to know it was 600 BC. The oracle was Aesop, and his enduring, though somewhat incomplete investment insight was a bird in the hand that's worth two in the bush. To flesh out this principle, you must answer only three questions. How certain are you that there are indeed birds in the bush? When will they emerge and how many will there be? What is the risk-free interest rate, which we consider to be the yield on long-term U.S. bonds? If you can answer these three questions, you will know the maximum value of the bush. And the maximum numbers of birds you know possess that should be offered for it. And of course, don't literally think birds, think dollars. Aesop's investment axiom, thus expanded and converted into dollars, is immutable. It applies to outlays for farms, oils, royalties, bonds, stocks, lottery tickets, and manufacturing plants. Neither the advent of the steam engine, the harnessing of electric, nor creation of the automobile changed the formula on iota, nor will the internet. Just insert the correct numbers and you can rank the attractiveness of all possible use of capital throughout the universe. Common yardsticks such as dividend yield and ratio, price to earning, or to book value and even growth rates have nothing to do with valuation, except to the extent that they provide clues to the amount and timing of cash flows in turn from the business. Indeed, growth can destroy value if it requires cash inputs in the early years of a project or interest that exceed the discount value of the cash that those assets will generate in later years. Market commentators and investment managers who glibly refer to growth and value styles as contrasting approaches to investments are displaying their ignorance, not their sophistication. Growth is simply a component, usually plus sometimes a minus in the value equation, unless, though Aesop's proposition as a third variable, that is, interest rates are simple, plugging in numbers for others two variables is a difficult task. Using precise numbers is in fact foolish. With a range of possibilities is the better approach. Usually the range must be so wide that no useful conclusion can be reached. Occasionally, though, even very conservative estimates about the future emergence of birds reveal that the price quoted is startlingly low in relation to value. Let's call this phenomenon the IBT, inefficient bush theory. To be sure, an investor needs some general understanding of business economics as well as the ability to think independently to reach a well-founded positive conclusion, but the investors does not need brilliance or blinding insights. At the other extreme, there are many times when the most brilliant of investors can muster a conviction about the birds to emerge, not even when a very broad range of estimates is employed. This kind of uncertainty frequently occurs when new business and rapidly changing industries are under examination. In case of this sort, any capital commitment must be labeled speculative. Now, speculation in which the focus is not on what an asset will produce, but rather on what the next fellow will pay for it, is neither illegal, immoral, nor un-American, but it's not a game in which Charlie and I wish to play. We bring nothing to the party, so why should we expect to take anything home? The lines separating investment and speculation was just never budding clear because blurred still further when most market participants have recently enjoyed triumphs. Nothing sedates rationality like large doses of effortless money. After a heady experience of that kind, normally sensible people drift into behavior akin to that of Cinderella at the ball. They know that overstaying the festivities, that is continuing to speculate in companies that have gigantic valuations relative to the cash they are likely to generate in the future will eventually bring on pumpkins and mice. But they nevertheless hate to miss a single minute of what is one hell of a party. Therefore, the giddy participants all plan to leave just seconds before midnight. There's a problem, though. They are dancing in a room in which the clocks have no hands. Last year, we commented on the exuberance, and yes, it was irrational. That prevailed nothing that investors' expectations had grown to be several multiples of probable returns. One piece of evidence came from a Payne-Weber Gallup survey of investors conducted in December 1999, in which the participants were asked their opinion about the annual returns investors could expect to realize over the decade ahead. Their answers averaged 19%. That for sure was an irrational expectation for American business as a whole. There could it possibly be enough birds in 2009 Bush to deliver such a return. Far more rational still was where the huge valuations that market participants were then putting up on business almost certain to end up being of modest or no value, yet investors mesmerized by soaring stock prices and ignoring all else piled into these enterprises. It was as if some virus racing wildly among investment professionals as well as amateurs induced hallucination which the values of stock in certain sectors became the culprit for the values of the business that underlay them. This surreal scene was accompanied by much loose talk about the value creation. We readily acknowledged that there has been a huge amount of true value created in the past decade by new or young businesses, and that there is much more to come, but value is destroyed nor created by any business that loses money over its lifetime, no matter how high its interim valuation may get. What actually occurs in these cases is wealth transfer, often on a massive scale. By shamelessly merchandising birdless bushes, promoters have in recent years moved billions of dollars from the pockets of the public to their own purses and to those of their friends and associates. The fact is that a bubble market has allowed the creation of bubble companies, and it is designed more than with an eye to making money off investors rather than for them. Too often an IPO, not profit, was the primarily goal of a company promoters. At bottom, the business model for these companies has been the old-fashioned chain letter for which many fee-hungry investment bankers acted as eager postmen. But a pin lines in wait for every bubble, and when the two eventually meet, a new wave of investors learn some very old lessons. First, many in Wall Street, a community in which quality control is not priced, will sell investors anything they will buy. Second, speculation is most dangerous when it looks easiest. At Berkshire, we make no attempt to pick the few winners that will emerge from an ocean of unproven enterprises. We're not smart enough to do that, and we know it. Instead, we try to apply Aesop's 2,600-year-old equation to opportunities in which we have reasonable confidence as to how many birds are in the bush and why they will emerge. A formulation that my grandsons would probably update to: a girl into convertibles worth 5 in the phone book. Obviously, we can never precisely predict the timing of cash flows in and out of business or their exact amount. We try, therefore, to keep our estimates conservative and to focus on industries where business surprises are unlikely to wreak havoc on owners. Even so, we make many mistakes. I'm the fellow remember who thought he understood the future economics of trading stamps, textiles, shoes, and second-tier department stores. Lately, the most promising bushes have been negotiated transactions for entire business, and that pleases us. You should clearly understand, however, that these acquisitions will at best provide us only reasonable returns. Really juicy results from negotiated deals can be anticipated only when capital markets are severely constrained and the whole business world is pessimistic. We are 180 degrees from that point. Sources of reported earnings. The table that follows shows the main source of Berkshire's reported earnings. In this presentation, purchase accounting adjustments are not assigned to the specific business to which they apply, but instead aggregated and shown separately. This procedure lets you view the earnings of our business as they would have been reported had we not purchased them. For the reasons discussed on page 65, this form of presentation seems to us to be more useful to investors and managers than when utilizing generally accepted accounting principles, GWP, which requires purchase premiums to be charged off business by business. The total net earnings we show in the table are, of course, identical to GWP total in our audited financial statements. Operating earnings, insurance groups, underwriting or insurance, underwriting Geico, underwriting other primary and net investment income, finance and financial products business, flight services, Mid-American Energy, 76% owned, retail operations, Scott Fetzer, excluding finance operation, other businesses, purchase accounting adjustments, corporate interest expense, shareholders designated contributions, other operating earnings, capital gains from investments, total earnings, all entities, pre-tax earnings, 2,000, 1,399, 224, 38, 2,747, 556, 213, 197, 175, 122, 225, 881, 92, 17, 39, 1,699, 3,955, $5,654, 1999, 1,440, 24, 22, 2,482, 125, 225, 130, 147, 210, 739, 109, 17, 25, 1,085, 1,365, 2,450. In millions, Berkshire shares of net earnings after taxes and minority interest: $2,899, 146, 24, 1,929, 360, 126, 109, 104, 80, 134, 843, 61, 11, 30, 936, 2,392, 3,328. $927, 16, 14, 1,764, 86, 132, blank, 77, 92, 131, 648, 70, 11, 15, 671, 886, 1,557. Most of our manufacturing, retailing, and service business did at least reasonably well last year. The exception was shoes, particularly at Dexter's. In our shoe business, generally, our attempt to keep the bulk of our production in domestic factories has cost us dearly. We faced another very tough year in 2001, also as we make significant changes in how we do business. Actually, we made a mistake in paying what I did for Dexter in 1993. Furthermore, I compounded that mistake in a huge way by using Berkshire shares in payment. Last year, to recognize my error, we charged off all the remaining counting goodwill that was attributable to the Dexter transaction. We may regain some economic goodwill at Dexter in the future, but we clearly have none at present. The managers for our shoe business are first class from both a business and human perspective. They are working very hard at a tough and often terribly painful job, even though their personal financial circumstances don't require them to do so. They have my admiration and thanks. On a more pleasant note, we continue to be an undisputed leader in two branches of aircraft services, pilot training at Flight Safety, FSI, and fractional ownership of business jets at Executive Jet, EJA. Both companies are run by their remarkable founders. Al Ualchi at FSI is now 83 and continues to operate at full throttle. Though I'm not a fan of stock splits, I am planning to split Al's age 2-for-1 when he hits 100. If it works, guess who's next? We spent $272 million on flight simulators in 2000 and will spend a similar amount this year. Anyone who thinks that the annual charges for depreciation don't reflect the real cost, every bit is real as payroll and raw material, should get an internship as a similar company. Everywhere to spend spend amounts equal to our depreciation charge, simply stay in the same economic place, and then spend additional sums to grow, and growth is in prospect for FSI as far as the eye can see. Even faster growth awaits EJA, whose fractional ownership program is called NetJets. Rich Santulli is a dynamo behind this business. Last year, I told you that EJA's recurring revenue from monthly management fees and hourly usage grew by 46% in 1999. In 2000, the growth was 49%. I also told you that this was a low-margin business in which survivors will be few. Margins were indeed slim at EJA last year, in part because of the major costs we are incurring in developing our business in Europe. Regardless of the cost, you can be sure that EJA's spending on safety will be whatever is needed. Obviously, we would follow this policy under any circumstance, but there's some self-interest here as well. I, my wife, my children, my sisters, my 94-year-old aunt, and all but one of our directors and at least 9 Berkshire managers regularly fly in the NetJets program. Given that cargo, I applaud Rich, the insistence on usually high amounts of pilot training, an average of 23 days a year. In addition, our pilots cement their skills by flying 800 or so hours a year. Finally, each flies only one model of aircraft, which means our crews do no switching around among planes with different cockpit and flight characteristics. EJA's business continues to be constrained by the availability of new aircraft, so our customers will take delivery of more than 15 new jets in 2007. 7% world output. We are confident we will remain the world leader in fractional ownership in respect to number of planes, flying quality of service, and standard of safety. Additional information about our various businesses is given on pages 42 to 58, where you will also find our segment earnings reported on a GAAP basis. In addition, on pages 67 to 73, we have rearranged Berkshire's financial data into 4 segments on a non-GAAP basis, a presentation that corresponds to the way Charlie and I think about the company. Look-through earnings. Reported earnings are an inadequate measure of economic progress at Berkshire, in part because of the numbers shown in the table on page 15 include only the dividends we receive from investees, though these dividends typically represent only a small fraction of the earning attributable to our ownership. To depict something closer to the economic reality at Berkshire than reported earnings through, though we employ the concept of look-through earnings as we calculate these. They consist of 1, operating earnings reported on page 15, plus 2, our share of the return operating earnings of major investees that under GAAP accounting are not reflected in our profits, less 3, an allowance for the tax that would be paid by Berkshire if these retained earnings of investees had instead been distributed to us. When tabulating operating earnings here, we exclude purchase accounting adjustments as well as capital gains and other major non-recurring items. The following table sets forth our 2000 look-through earnings, though I warn you that the figures can be no more than approximate since they are based on a number of judgment calls. The dividend paid to us by these investees have been included in the operating earnings itemized on page 15, mostly under insurance group, net investment income. Berkshire major investees: American Express Company, the Coca-Cola Company, Freddie Mac, the Gillette Company, M&T Bank, the Washington Post Company, Wells Fargo and Company. Berkshire's approximate ownership at year-end: 11.4%, 8.1%, 0.3%, 9.1%, 7.2%, 18.3%, 3.2%. Berkshire share of undistributed operating families in millions: $265, 160, 106, 51, 23, 18, 117. Berkshire share of undistributed earnings of major investees, 740. Hypothetical tax on undistributed investee earnings, 104. Reported operated earnings of Berkshire, 1,779. Total look-through earnings of Berkshire, $2,415. Does not include shares allocable to minority interests. Calculate an average ownership for the year. 3. The tax rate used 14%, which is the rate of Berkshire pays on most dividends it receives. Full and fair reporting. At Berkshire, full reporting means giving the information that we would wish you to give us if our positions were reversed. What Charlie and I would want to, under circumstances, would be all the important facts about current operations, as well as the CEO's frank view of long-term economic characteristics of the business, we will expect both a lot of financial details and the discussion of any significant data. We would need to interpret what is presented. When Charlie and I read reports, we have no interest in pictures of personal plants or products reference to EBITDA or make us shudder. Does management think the tooth fairy pays for capital expenditures for very suspicious accounting methodology that is vague or unclear, since too often that means management wishes to hide something? They don't want to read messages that the public relations department or consultant has turned out. Instead, we expect the company CEO to explain in his or her own words what's happening. For us, fair reporting means getting information to our 300,000 partners simultaneously or as close to the marks as possible. We therefore put our annual quarterly financials on the internet between the close of the market on Friday and the following morning. By our doing that, that shareholders and other interested investors have timely access to these important releases and also have a reasonable amount of time to digest information and include before markets open on Monday. This year, our quarterly information will be available on Saturdays of May 12, August 11, November 10, 2001. Annual reports will be posted on March 9. We applaud the work of Arthur Levitt Jr., until recently chairman of the SEC, has done checking down on the corporate practice of selective disclosure that spread like cancer in recent years. It had become virtually standard practice for major corporations to guide analysts or large holders to earnings expectations that were intended either to be one to the nose or a tiny bit below what the company decided to earn. Though deflectively dispersed hints, swings, and nods that companies engaged in speculatively minded institutions and advisors were given information edge over investment-oriented individuals, this was corrupt behavior unfortunately embraced by both Wall Street and corporate America. Levitt, whose general efforts on behalf of investors were both tireless and effective, corporations are now required to treat all of their owners equally. The fact that this reform came about because of coercion rather than conscience should be a matter of shame for CEOs and their investor relations departments. One further thought, while I'm on my soapbox, Charlie and I think it's both deceptive and dangerous for CEOs to predict growth rates for their companies. They are, of course, frequently egged on to do so by both analysts and their own investor relations departments. They should resist, however, because too often these predictions lead to trouble. It's fine for a CEO to have his own internal goals in an interview. It's even appropriate for a CEO to publicly express some hopes about the future if these expectations are accompanied by sensible caveats. But for a major corporation to predict that its per-share earnings will grow over the long term at, say, 15% annually, it's a core trouble. That's true because a growth rate of that magnitude can only be maintained by a very small percentage of large businesses. Here's a task to examine the record of, say, the 200 highest earning companies from 1970 or 1980 and tabulate how many have increased per-share earnings by 15% annually since those dates. You'll find that only a handful have. I would wager you a very significant sum that fewer than 10 of the 200 most profitable companies in 2000 will attain 15% annual growth in earnings per share over the next 20 years. The problem arising from lofty prediction is not just they spurred unwarranted optimism. Even more troublesome is the fact that they corrode CEO behavior over the years. Charlie and I have observed many instances in which CEOs engage in economic, operating, and maneuvers so that they could meet earnings target that they had announced. Worse still, after exhausting all the operating acrobatics would do, they sometimes played a wide variety of accounting games to make the numbers. These accounting shenanigans have a way of snowballing. Once a company moves earnings from one period to another, operating shortfalls that occur thereafter require it to engage in further accounting maneuvers that must be even more heroic. These can turn fudging into fraud. More heroic, these can turn fudging into fraud. More money, it has been noted, has been stolen with the point of a pen than the point of a gun. Charlie and I tend to be leery of companies run by CEOs who woo-woo investors with fancy predictions. A few of these managers will prove prophetic, but others will turn out to be congenital optimists or even charlatans. Unfortunately, it's not easy for investors to know in advance which species they're dealing with. I've warned you in the past that you should not believe everything you read or hear about Berkshire, even when it is published or broadcast by a prestigious news organization. Indeed, erroneous reports are particularly dangerous when they are circulated by highly respected members of the media, simply because most readers and listeners know these outlets to be generally credible and therefore believe what they say. An example is a glaring error about Berkshire's activity that appeared in December 29 issue of the Wall Street Journal, a generally excellent paper that I have for all my life found useful. On the front page and above the fold is the journal published a news brief that said in equivocal terms that we were buying bonds of Conseco and Finova. This item directed the reader to lead the story of the money in the investing section. There, in the second paragraph of the story, the journal reported again, without any qualification, that Berkshire was buying Conseco and Finova bonds, adding that Berkshire had invested several $100 million in each only in the 18th paragraph of the story, which by the point had jumped onto an inside page. Did the paper hedge a bit, saying that our Conseco purchase had been disclosed by people familiar with the matter. Well, not that familiar. True, we had purchased bonds in bank debt of Finova. True, the report was wildly inaccurate as to the amount, but to this day, neither Berkshire nor I have ever bought a share of stock or a bond of Conseco. Berkshire is normally covered by a journal reporter in Chicago who is both accurate and conscientious in this case. However, the scoop was a product of a New York reporter for the paper. Indeed, the 29th was a busy day for him. By early afternoon, he had repeated the story on CNBC immediately in Lemming-like manner. Other respected news organizations relying solely on the journal began relating the same facts. The result, Conseco stock advanced sharply during the day on an exceptional volume that placed it in 9th in NYSE most active list. Drawing the stories or iterations, I never heard or read the word rumor. Apparently, reporters and editors who generally pride themselves on their careful use of language just can't bring themselves to attach this word to their accounts, but what description would fit more precisely? Certain not the usual sources say, or it has been reported. A column entitled Today's Rumors, however, would not equate with the self-image of the many news organizations that think themselves above such stuff. These members of the media would feel that publishing such acknowledged fluff would be akin to L'Osservatore Romano, initiating a gossip column, but rumors are what these organizations often publish and broadcast. Whatever euphemism they duck behind, at a minimum, readers deserve honest terminology, a warning label that will protect their financial health in the same way that smokers whose physical health is at risk are given a warning. The Constitution First Amendment allows the media to print or say almost anything. Journalism first principle should require that the media be scrupulous in deciding what that will be. Miscellaneous. In last year's report, we examined the battle that raging over the use of pooling and accounting for mergers. It seemed to us that both sides were voicing arguments that were strong in certain respects and seriously flawed in others. We are pleased that the Financial Accounting Standards Board has since gone to an alternative approach that strikes us as very sound. If the proposed rule becomes final, we will no longer incur a large annual charge for amortization of intangibles. Consequently, our reported earnings will more closely reflect economic reality. See page 655. None of this will have an effect on Berkshire's intrinsic value. Your chairman, however, will personally benefit in that there will be one less item to explain in these letters. I'm enclosing a report generously supplied by Outstanding Investor Digest of Charlie's remarks at last May's Wesco annual meeting. Charlie thinks about business economics and investment matters better than anyone I know, and I've learned a lot over the years by listening to him. Reading his comments will improve your understanding of Berkshire. In 1985, we purchased Scott Fester, acquiring not only a fine business but the services of Ralph Shea, a truly outstanding CEO as well. Ralph was then 61. Most companies focus on the color rather than ability, would have benefited from Ralph's talents for only a few years. At Berkshire, in contrast, Ralph ran Scott Fester for 15 years until his retirement at the end of 2000. Under his leadership, the company distributed $1.03 billion to Berkshire against our net purchase price of $230 million. We used these funds in turn to purchase other business. All told, Ralph's contributions to Berkshire's present value extend well into the billions of dollars. As a manager, Ralph belongs in the Berkshire's Hall of Fame, and Charlie and I welcome him to it. A bit of nostalgia. It was exactly 50 years ago that I entered Ben Grimm's class at Columbia during the decade before. I enjoyed loved analyzing, buying, and selling stocks, but my results were no better than average. Beginning in 1950, when my performance improved, no, I hadn't changed my diet or taken up exercise. The only new ingredient was Ben's ideas. Quite simply, a few hours spent at the feet of the master proved far more valuable to me than I had 10 years of supposedly original thinking. In addition to being a great teacher, Ben was a wonderful friend. My debt to him is incalculable. Shareholder designated contributions. About 97% of all eligible shares participated in Berkshire's 2000 shareholder designated contribution program, with contributions totaling $16.9 million. A full description of the program appears on pages 74 to 75. Cumulatively, over the 20 years of the program, Berkshire has made contributions of $164 million pursuant to the instructions of our shareholders. The rest of Berkshire's giving is done by our subsidiaries, which sticks to the philanthropic patterns that prevailed before they were acquired, except that their former owners themselves take on responsibility for their personal charities. In aggregate, our subsidiaries made contributions of about $18.3 million in 2000, including in-kind donations of $3 million. To participate in future programs, you must own a Class A shares that are registered in the name of the actual owner, not the nominee name of a broker, bank, or depository. Shares not so registered on August 31, 2001 will be ineligible for the 2001 program. When you get the contribution form from us, return it promptly so that it does not get put aside or forgotten. Designations received after due date will not be honored. The annual meeting. Last year, we moved the annual meeting to the Civic Auditorium, and it worked very well for us. We will meet there again on Saturday, April 28th. The doors will open at 7 a.m. The movie will begin at 8:30, and the meeting itself will commence at 9:30. There will be a short break at noon for food, with sandwiches available at the Civic's concession stands. Except for that interlude, Charlie and I will answer the questions until 3:30. For the next couple of years, the Civic is our only choice. We must therefore hold a meeting on either Saturday or Sunday to avoid the traffic and parking nightmare that would occur on weekdays. Shortly, however, Omaha will have a new convention center with ample parking. Assuming that the center isn't available to us, I will poll shareholders to see whether you wish to return to a Monday meeting. We'll decide that votes based on the wishes of majority of shareholders, not shares. An attachment to the proxy material that is enclosed with this report explains how you can obtain the credential you will need for admissions to this year's meeting and other events. As for plane, hotel, and car reservations, we have again signed up American Express 800-799-6634 to give you special help in our normal fashion. We will run buses from larger hotels to the meeting. After the meeting, the buses will make trips back to the hotels and to Nebraska Furniture Mart, Borsheim's, and the airport. Even so, you're likely to find the car useful. We have added so many new companies to Berkshire this year that I'm not going to detail all the products that we will be selling at the meeting, but come prepared to carry home everything from bricks to candy. One new product, however, deserves special note. Bob Shaw designed a 3x5 rug featuring an excellent likeness of Charlie. Obviously, it would be embarrassing for Charlie to make that humiliating if slow sales force us to slash the rug's price, so step up and do your part. Geico will have booths staffed by a number of its top counselors from around the country, all of them ready to supply you with auto insurance quotes. In most cases, Geico will be able to offer you special shareholders discount, usually 8%. Bring the details of your existing insurance and check out whether you can save you more money. At the Omaha Airport on Saturday, we will have the usual array of aircraft from Executive Jet available for your inspection. Just as ask an EJA representative at the Civic about viewing any of these planes. If you buy what we consider an appropriate number of items during the weekend, you may well need your own plane to take them home. At Nebraska Furniture Mart, located on a 75-acre site on the 72nd Street between Dodge and Pacific, we will again be having Berkshire Weekend pricing, which means we will be offering our shareholders a discount that is customarily given only to employees. We initiated this special pricing at NFM 4 years ago, and sales during the weekend grew from $5.3 million in 1997 to $9.1 million in 2000. To get the discount, you must make your purchase between Wednesday, April 25 and Monday, April 30, and also present your meeting credentials. The period of special pricing will even apply to the products of several prestige manufacturers that normally have ironclad rules against discounting, but that in this period of our shareholder weekend have been an exception for you. We appreciate your cooperation. NFM is open from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. Borsheim, the largest jewelry store in the country except for Tiffany's Manhattan store, will have 2 shareholders-only events. The first will be a cocktail reception from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Friday, April 27. The second main gala will be from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday, April 29. Shareholder prizes will be available Thursday through Monday, so if you wish to avoid the large crowds that will assemble on Friday evening and Sunday, come at other times and identify yourself as a shareholder. On Saturday, will be open until 6 p.m. Borsheim operates in a gross margin that is full 20 percentage points below that of its major rivals. So the more you buy, the more you save, or at least that's what my family always tells me. In the mall outside of Borsheim's, we will have local bridge experts available to play with our shareholders on Sunday. Bob Hammond, who normally is with us, will be in Africa this year. He has promised, however, to be on hand in 2002. Patrick Wolf, twice U.S. chess champion, will also be in the mall taking on all comers blindfolded. Last year, Patrick played as many as 6 games simultaneously with us blindfolded, securely in place, and demolished his opponents. And if all this isn't enough to test your skills, our Borsheim's Olympiad this year will also include Bill Roberti, one of the only 2 players who twice win the Bagamon World Championship. Bagamon can be a big money game, so bring along your stock certificates. Gort's, my favorite steakhouse, will again be open exclusively for Berkshire shareholders on Sunday. April 29 will be serving from 4 p.m. until 10 p.m. Please remember that you can't come to Goret's on Sunday without a reservation. To make one, call 402-551-3733 on April 2, but not before. If Sunday is sold out, try Goret's on one of the other evenings who will be in town. If you order a rare T-bone with a double order of hash brown, you will establish your credentials as an epicure. The usual baseball game will be held at Rosenblatt Stadium at 7 p.m. on Saturday night. This year, the Omaha Golden Spikes will play the New Orleans Zephyrs. Ernie Banks is again going to be in hand bravely face my fastball, was clocked at 95 mpm miles per month. My performance last year was not my best. It took me 5 pitches to throw anything resembling a strike, and believe me, it gets lonely on the mound when you can't find the plate. Finally, I got one over and Ernie lashed a line drive to left the field. After I was yanked from the game, the many sports writers present asked what I had served. After Ernie, I quoted what Warren Spahn said after Willie Mays hit one of his pitches for a home run. Will's first in the major, it was a hell of a pitch for the 65th. It will be a different story this year. I don't want to tip my hand, so let's just say Ernie will have to deal with a pitch he has never seen before. Our proxy statement contains instructions about obtaining tickets to the game and also a large quantity of other information that will help you. Enjoy your visit in Omaha. There will be plenty of action in town, so come for a Woodstock weekend and join our celebration of capitalism at the Civic. February 28, 2001. Warren E. Buffett, Chairman of the Board.